Hello guys, good morning. Welcome to the session. Let's start. Okay, in last class we have been talking about database, right? RDS, relational database. Okay, let us connect to this database. I'll change my region. Okay, create database. MySQL we know, and then free tier. Subnet group default. We will go with default VPC. This time we will make it, yes, public access is there. So EC2 instances and devices outside the VPC can also connect to this database. And then that's it. Availability zone and security group default, existing one. And this security group, which is assigned to the database, if you are choosing private, now we have made it as public database. If it is a private access, then you should edit the security group and add the security group of your EC2 instance. That's it. Additional configuration is related to backups. We already discussed this. So let us create this database. Okay, it takes some time. Meanwhile, I'll go and create EC2 instance also. Configure instance details, network, subnet, we can leave it as is because we are going with default VPC. Sorry. In security group, let us add HTTP rule and also MySQL rule. Say anywhere, it will add internet cider range. And let us name this as security group 1. And launch it. Download key pair, launch instance. Okay, meanwhile, we'll go and see RDS. Still getting created, creating, in the process of creating. So we'll come back here. Then we have another database. All these are relational database. We have DynamoDB. It is AWS own product, NoSQL database. Amazon DynamoDB is fast, flexible, NoSQL database service for all the application. Let us create a DynamoDB table. Table name, let us call it as table primary key. And here how these DynamoDB works is, here primary key is mandatory, and you can also add sort key. Sort key is also a part of primary key, and we can call, if you don't go for sort key, then that primary key is called as a regular or simple primary key, or if you go for add sort key, then we call it as composite primary key. That means primary key has two parts, partition key as well as sort key. And the advantage of DynamoDB, which is NoSQL database, is it is flexible and super scalable. It compared with MySQL, of course MySQL also, it is scalable. We can say comparatively, if you compare with RDS, relational databases, DynamoDB or NoSQL can store unstructured data, whereas MySQL can store only structured data. That is one advantage with DynamoDB or a NoSQL database. And also scalable, or you can say flexible compared with RDS. So in RDS, you will create rows, columns, sorry, and say if I want to create employee database, I'll add employee ID, their name, their address, their job role, their salary, etc. Suppose there are n number of columns, so 10 columns are there. Then in MySQL database, I will be able to send data in these 10 columns. If I want to add one more column, I should add one more column, and then I will be able to send the data into the new column. But NoSQL database, it only checks primary key. So if any new column is coming, then itself it will create a new column and add values into it. So let us create and understand what it does. So primary key, let us call employee ID as we'll take the same example, employee ID. Is a partition key. I'm not going for sort key. You can also go to sort key and add one more primary key like employee name. Right. So, but I'm not adding it. And table settings, we are using default settings. No secondary indexes. Provisioned capacity set to 5 reads and 5 writes. So the throughput is set to 5 reads and 5 writes at a time. Maximum provision capacity is set to 5 reads, reading from the DynamoDB, and 5 writes. And basic alarms with 80% upper threshold, then SNS topic DynamoDB. That means a basic alarm will be there when 80% of threshold is met, 80% of throughput or 80% of a DynamoDB capacity. If it is reached, it will create a topic DynamoDB to send alerts. And encryption at rest and default encryption type. So we are using the default settings and create a table. Yes, it's there, created. Now go to items. See, employee ID is there because I have given only that one, and I have not added sort key. If I have added the sort key, one more column will be there. Let us add one more item, create item, or we say put item. Employee ID, let us say employee ID, and insert one more string. So append, will append string, employee name, let's say Sirisha. Right, that's it. See, this is not a column which I have created before. Let's save. So employee name Sirisha. Let us create an item. I'm not giving this, and I'll append date, say joining date, something like this. It will throw error. See why? Because one parameter, the primary key, it only checks primary key. So primary key is you have to provide primary key, that is employee ID. And say, see now a new column has been created. So this is what we are calling flexibility. It only checks primary key. It only try to match it with the primary key. If primary key is there, then this DynamoDB table will not bother about other keys. So we send data in key value pairs. Key will be the column name and value be uh, the entry which has to be the value which has to be entered in the respective column. If any new keys are coming, that's fine, but DynamoDB tries to match only primary key. And yeah, you can leave the spaces in between, and you can add new keys, there is new columns, but primary key is mandatory. And this is how you write to data table, a DynamoDB table. And regarding reading, getting from the DynamoDB table, here there are two types of get operations, read operations. One is scan and another one is query. So query checks the partition key employee ID. So let's say employee ID. Let us create an item. Oh, sorry, this is name, right? Append string. Okay, right, we have added one more entry. And now let us query, and query asks partition key, and it is mandatory, the employee ID, and I can check using primary ID. So suppose I want to check for this employee ID. I can see that one. And scan will scan the entire table. And you can use filters here. So scan the table, add filter, table. If you want to use attribute joining date, or you only want to use employee name, and value, why there are no, add filter. It will scan the entire table, whereas query will only look into the primary key. Scan will scan all the attributes. You can add filters related to other attributes simply. If you want to check the other keys also, yes, it's possible in scan, but in query, by default, primary key is mandatory. Of course, you can add filters, other filters also, ascending, descending, all these things, but primary key is mandatory, whereas in scan, without primary key also, you can scan certain key um, uh, with entire table. Say employee ID itself. String. If employee ID is equal to 6785, right? So you can add other things also, joining date. So two types of uh, get methods, scan and query. And write, we know you have to write in the form of key value pair. So here we are directly inserting. If you are sending data from through programs or through CLI, then the format has to be in JSON format, like key value pairs. Key should be the column name, and associated value will be entered into the respective column. And coming to actions which you can perform on this DynamoDB table, you can duplicate, edit, delete, export the data to .csv, manage TTL means time to live. If you enable TTL, it will take 1 hour to apply across all the partitions. This time to live means it's a mechanism to set a specific timestamp for expiring items in your table. Right? So you can suppose you are feeding these data into say queues, right? Queues, from queues it will go to the applications, or if you're using DynamoDB streams directly. Suppose this application is not reading the data. If you are streaming the data through DynamoDB streams or any other stream, but for some reason application is not active, it's inactive, and it's not getting that data, fetching that data through it query request, then this time to live, according to the timestamp which you have given, it will keep data alive for that period of time. If you say 1 hour, 2 hours, or 24 hours, it will keep that data alive. And then after that time, it will expire the data item. And that is TTL, time to live, and manage live count. So right here you can manage the live count. And then we have metrics. So metrics, we know you can monitor. This is latency. All these are metrics related. Read capacity. If you see read capacity, it's units per second. Write capacity is also 1 minute average. So here read capacity and write capacity are different. Write capacity is 4 KB. I guess it's 4 KB. That means if you are writing the throughput is 4 KB. If you are writing 2 KB of data, you are not writing 4 KB of data, then also the throughput used is for 4 KB. And similarly for read, I think read capacity is 4 KB. If you are reading 2 KB of data, the throughput used is for 4 KB. Let's say DynamoDB read write capacity. So it will help you to calculate, to monitor your bills. Where it is. So much of information. So here you are using 6 capacity units, and each capacity unit supports 4 KB of read. Suppose if you are reading 2 KB of data also, the throughput is used for 4 KB. So you'll be charged for that one capacity. That's what we are trying to understand. So you're actually reading 2 KB of data from the DynamoDB table, but the throughput used is by default for 4 KB. And you will be charged for using one capacity unit, not half a capacity unit. And one capacity unit means the throughput is 4 KB. Similarly for write also, I think write is 2 KB. You can write 2 KB. The throughput used is 2 KB. Suppose it's a 2 KB or 1 KB. You are writing only 500 bytes of data. Then what happens? It will not charge for half a capacity unit. If a read capacity is 1 byte or 1 kilobyte, if you are writing only 500 bytes, then the charge will be for one write capacity unit. So 1 KB is the throughput. One capacity means its throughput is equivalent to 1 kilobyte. You can write 1 kilobyte of data using one capacity. If you want to write 6 kilobytes, then you have to use 6 capacity units. So if you are using somewhere between 500 bytes or there, something like that, so it will not calculate it as a half. AWS will treat it as one capacity unit. You will be charged for one capacity unit. Same thing with read and write. And let's close this. And here, one more feature with DynamoDB table is you can make it global. Whereas right now it is local, you can see Mumbai region. My DynamoDB table I have created in Mumbai region, and RDS, a relational database service, they are also regional services. And we have our RDS service also in Mumbai region. And you here we have an option of creating global tables like S3. You can also make DynamoDB as a global one. To create a global table, ensure that DynamoDB streams are enabled. enable streams. Since it's global, right? So we have enabled the DynamoDB stream. Now you can add region, same like S3. You'll create S3 bucket in certain region, but it is globally available and accessible. Same thing, add a region, add replica to global table. Say Singapore, create replica. Another DynamoDB will be created in Singapore, and this time it will create a global table. So you are creating 2019's global table. So let us not do it. So the charge will be high for global table comparatively with the regular DynamoDB table. And going back, we are at here. We talked about items, query, scan, the methods used to get data from the DynamoDB table. And coming to metrics, we know all these read capacity, write capacity, how much of read write capacities you have used so far. I have used 5 capacities, but this is not the capacity which I have used. This is threshold, five, somewhere in between 5 and 6. I think it's 5. 5 is the threshold. I can use 5 capacity units max. If I want to provision, make it more, I can provision. But since I have launched it in free tier, I have gone with by default options, and the maximum is 5 read capacities and 5 write capacities. And throttle write requests, write events, and other metrics. And alarms. We have 2 alarms. By default, it came along with the settings. We have not created these alarms. And these alarms, when threshold, see the maximum threshold is 5 capacity units, right? 5 read capacity units and 5 write capacity units. If I am reaching the threshold, then it will notify to the topic called DynamoDB. And capacity. Here you can increase your capacity. And capacity calculator, go with this, and accordingly you can use your capacity. So capacity means how much of data you can write at a time. So my maximum capacity is only 5 capacity units, and I know that 1 capacity means 4 KB of data. 5 into 4, 20 KB of data. So I can write 20 KB of data at a time, not more than that. If I want to dump more data through a single at a time, then I have to increase my write capacity. Sorry, write capacity is only 1 KB, so I can write 5 KB of data at a time. Whereas read capacity is 5. That means 1 capacity unit is equal to 4 KB. We can read 20 KB of data from the DynamoDB at a time through a single query. And then indexes. Create a index. This is global secondary index. We already know that primary key is there. However, if you want to include the other index to efficiently work with DynamoDB, so right now we have only one primary key, and the queries which are made to DynamoDB table will be based on that primary key, and primary key is a mandatory one. If you want to add a secondary index which allow you to query efficiently over any field, so then you can add a secondary index. Say create index. Again, it is asking you primary key index name, right? And then global tables. We don't have any global table. We can create one which is globally available like S3 bucket. Backups status is disabled by default. If you enable, Same like RDS service. You can choose the time range, backup type, and it will be automated. It will automate the process of taking backup. In that given time slot, it will take backups every day or once in a week within the time range of 30 days. Contributor insights. Okay, CloudWatch contributor insights. So we have not yet discussed about CloudWatch. CloudWatch is a monitoring tool. And by default, CloudWatch monitoring is available for all the services. Here also, we have monitoring, right? Metrics here. So where this data all coming from? CloudWatch. So this monitoring tool will be there attached for each and every service. You can monitor the metrics using this CloudWatch. However, if you want to get insights from the CloudWatch, because CloudWatch monitors, if you want a DynamoDB diagnostics tool from the CloudWatch, you can manage contributor insights and triggers. So trigger is very helpful. See, create a trigger and it's a lambda function. So lambda function, when you want to trigger some action, say for example, when someone writes into DynamoDB table, that data has to be sent to a certain application, right? But application has to make a query request. Here two methods are there. Suppose a gaming dashboard, I want to build a gaming dashboard. What happens in the gaming dashboard, say Olympic gaming dashboard, each time the scores will be changing. It's a real time dashboard. People can log into their dashboard and check the score, etc. And we are using DynamoDB table to uh, store that data. There will be player name, game name, score, etc. So everything will be logged into DynamoDB table. And our real-time dashboard has to get the data from DynamoDB table. And we want to make it as highly available one. And also at the same time, we have to reduce the costs and also we should improve the performance. And I don't want my application every time to scan the table or every time keep on querying the table. Whenever new entry is there, new entry means new score. Whenever a new entry is there in the table, application should know it. It will send a query and fetch that value. I can do like once in a minute. Every minute, for every couple of minutes, my application has to scan the table and get the latest entries. This is one way of doing. But disadvantages of scanning the entire table for every minute means it affects the performance of the application, or unnecessarily my application needs large of processing capacity, lot of processing capacity. So instead what we can do, we can add a trigger on DynamoDB table. Whenever a new score comes into the DynamoDB table, I'll add a trigger, create trigger. I'll use a lambda function. No existing lambda functions. This is a new account. So let us add a new function. So here itself, you can add a new lambda function. Lambda is it's also called as serverless computing. What is meaning of serverless computing means lambda here, you can run some piece of code without underlying dependencies. Suppose I want to run a Python code, then give a function name. This is my gaming function. Right now we will create a new role. with Lambda basic permissions. Later on, we will give DynamoDB, etc. And then add a DynamoDB trigger. The largest number of records will read from tables upstream ones. Let us keep it default. Starting position latest. So this is Lambda function code. If you see here, for event records, event ID. So this is Node.js. If you want to write in Python, where is the option? By default, it is Node.js. You can use other also. So anyway, let us say create function. So we are adding trigger from here. That means whenever there is new entry, new row has added to DynamoDB table, means it will trigger this Lambda function. And this Lambda function will make a API call to your application. Then application will send the query the DynamoDB and get the latest update. Or you can also write a piece of code. Whenever a item is added in your DynamoDB table, you can enable this Lambda trigger. Lambda trigger will fetch the latest value and send to your app. So it's easy. Now you need not scan the entire table uh, every minute or for every couple of minutes. You will automatically get notified, and not only getting notified, your application will get the query through the Lambda trigger whenever there is a new score. So that is the advantage of trigger, and the only one is Lambda. You can create a function here itself, or you can use existing Lambda function. Access control. This access control, you can see identity provider Facebook. If you want to provide access to other applications, say Facebook, Google are already there. To get item or to write item, delete item, or to query item, update item, you can create a policy list. So if I am developing my own application, in our example, the real-time gaming dashboard, then log in with Amazon. So here there is no direct option anyway. I from the in the Lambda trigger, I'll provide my web identity, and this will be useful for mobile apps. And Web Identity Federation allow your mobile apps to use this identity providers. So such as login with Amazon, Facebook, Google, right? So nowadays, if you want to use any app, they will ask you to register, and we will be having this option: login with Facebook, login with Google. So when you log in with Google, Google already have your uh, details. So suppose I want to register with a traveling website. Then the traveling website is offering me login with Google option. So when I click on login with Google option, already Google has all my data, name, my contact details, email, etc. All these things. So Google will, then I have to assign an access of put item. So Google will put all those items into the DynamoDB table of the travel website. Okay, let's skip this. And tags we know. You can add tags, key value paste, which gives that extra information about the table. So this is DynamoDB table. And you need not use any, since it's a AWS product and it's AWS fully managed service, so it's not like RDS. To read data items, you can you have a console itself. We have a console itself to see DynamoDB table. But for RDS, you have to connect from your laptop or using EC2 instance. Let us say RDS. Databases. It's available now. Let us go here and I can see the endpoint name and the security group. And this is a security group. And by default, this security group allows all the traffic. And this is the source. Outbound rules allows all the traffic to internet. Inbound rules allows all the traffic from this one. This is the security group, allows all the traffic from this security group. Okay. And now let's go to EC2. So this is my RDS security group. And the security groups will be also in EC2 console. That's why we have been taken to EC2 console. So here my instance is also running. Let us connect to it. Say sudo -i. MySQL. Complete. Now I'll say MySQL -h host endpoint. Anyway, we will talk about this later, lambda function. And I want to connect with RDS database. Control V, and the port is 3306. Port is 3306, and then -p will ask you password which you have set while creating the RDS service. Why it's not coming? We have added go to EC2. security. We have added this one, and our instance is a public one, so no need of giving the uh, security group of MySQL. So since we have made it a public instance, we have given internet and the inbound rules of here. And go to RDS and check once. Databases, public accessibility is yes, it's there. And then we should be able to connect. Let's say yum install MariaDB. It's all there, already there. Let's check MySQL version. Okay. So here I forgot to mention username, sorry. Username admin. We have not changed the username, and then password. Connectivity and security. Database activity stream stopped. Why so? Maybe this is the reason. Say modify. Do not create a standby instance. Okay. Subnet group, security group, certificate authority, password authentication is yes. It's publicly accessible. And can you master password? And continue. Let's say apply immediately. Modify DB instance. And go here. So it says cannot connect to MySQL server on database. Some error is coming. It's not coming. Okay, it's something got wrong. Maybe trying with SSH will it has to come. Why? Because it's a public database and also we have installed MySQL in our EC2 instance. There are two security groups. Okay, only one security group, inbound and outbound. Inbound rules. Okay, let us add an inbound rule. Edit inbound rule. Port 3 from internet. From anywhere, internet. Save rules. So we have edited inbound rules. And now check. Connect to the instance. So MySQL Cannot connect to MySQL server through socket where lib. So let's go to here and check. Then install MySQL. Okay, yum install MySQL. It's already installed. CD. Let's go to home directory. Cannot connect to local. Okay, we don't have a local MySQL server. Let's try to execute this command now. MySQL hyphen host hyphen h means host, and give our RDS. Okay, now it's getting right. Welcome to MySQL connection ID. So issue here is the security group of database. So you have to add this security, add the rule in the security group where you have to go to here, go to security group of MySQL database, and here go to inbound rules, and you have to add this. You should add a rule allowing traffic from the internet, or since it's a public database, so it allows traffic from the internet. Suppose you have launched a private instance, then edit inbound rules. You have to allow the traffic through MySQL port, and you have to add security group of instance. I think this is the one, security group one. This one I'm using for my EC2. This is my EC2 instance is security group. So if it is private instance, so this has to be there. This rule has to be there. For public instances, this rule has to be there. Save rules. And on here, you have to say yum install MySQL. And here it should show the version, but for some reason I think double hyphens has to be there. I have given single hyphen. I think it's a double hyphen. We'll give you the version. Say MySQL. Okay. Vertical version something, at least it's not throwing an error. Okay, yum install MySQL. You have to install MySQL and then connect. So uh, you have to update the security group. After creating the instance, you cannot update the security group. After creating the instance, come back here and update the security group with this one, source as internet, if it is a public instance. If it is a private instance, instead of internet CIDR block, give the security group of EC2 instance. Right, and this is RDS security group. Uh, This is database security group. So that is RDS, guys. And we talked about RDS, DynamoDB. Let us go to services. And we have something called CloudWatch to monitor all the services. If you see here, not here, analytics. It will be under monitoring and or management. No, it's not there where it is. Database, storage, yeah, management and governance. CloudWatch is there. Already there are two alarms. I have not set up these alarms. This is a new AWS account which I created yesterday. And how these alarms came, guys? So these two alarms came with DynamoDB table, right? When I create my DynamoDB table, but I have gone with default settings. Right? So here, these two alarms. So they came with DynamoDB table. Let me delete this table. Delete. Go to CloudWatch. No recent alarms. And if you want, you can add your own alarms. Not only alarms, dashboard. If you see dashboard is empty here, you have to create dashboard. You won't get this create dashboard in any of these services. If it is EC2 dashboard or VPC dashboard or S3 dashboard, you can see all the resources you have provisioned in that service. So S3 will display list of S3 buckets. EC2 instances will show you number of instances running and other metrics. Same with VPC, how many VPCs are there and how many endpoints are there. So if you go to EC2 dashboard, I have one instance running. Here, EC2 dashboard. See, I have one instance running, dedicated host, how many security groups. So this is the dashboard. But CloudWatch asks you to create your own dashboard. And this dashboard is helpful for us. Suppose I am an admin. I want to monitor the resources that are there in the AWS. And by default, CloudWatch does that. All I have to do is create my dashboard. Create dashboard. Let us call it as monitoring dashboard. Let's say EC2. We will create it for EC2 because EC2 is there, and I also have database service. Create dashboard. Let us go for line. Next, go to metrics, configure. Say EC2 is there. Per instance metrics. Per instance metrics, let's say CPU utilization. Based on CPU utilization, I will get to know how my EC2 is getting used and create widget. So CPU utilization. Can create new dashboard or add another widget. I have RDS service. Let's say metrics, configure RDS, per database metrics, or if you want by database engine across all databases, let's go to per database metric. I want to check throughput, write and read throughput. So let's see, write throughput, create widget. So we have not written anything at all, but it's saying 8.56 M. So like this, here you can add so many widgets and also multiple dashboards. And also CloudWatch comes with other features. Let us go to CloudWatch. Dashboards, alarms, logs, events, of course, metrics. So these things are there. So let us set an alarm. Right now I have an EC2 instance running. I will set an alarm when my EC2 instance is running and if they are underutilized, because I cannot say overutilized. I am not. We are using these EC2 instances for just testing purpose to get to know about them. We are not actually using them as servers, so I have no option. I cannot. We There is no option of overutilization because if EC2 instance is running, it will be like that. If you forget, just in case to terminate or to stop the EC2 instance, we will set an alarm. Here you can also set budget alarm. We will do it later after this. In alarm, I'll set alarm for EC2. So I have DynamoDB, all these things. So let's say EC2. This is my average CPU utilization. Only 4% is getting utilized. So always my CPU utilization will be low. Just in case if I forgot to stop my instance, this I'll set an alarm. This alarm will stop the instance. Alarm, create alarm, select metric, EC2, per instance metrics. I'll go with CPU utilization. Select this metric. If CPU utilization, uh, let's say 1 minute, within this 1 minute, if it is getting underutilized, lower than equal to 20%. Obviously, it will be less than 20%. Lower than equal to 20%. Next, I want add EC2 action. I'll not send any SNS. Okay, select an existing SNS I don't have. So let's remove this. So if we want, we can create an SNS and use here. But let us remove this. And here add EC2 action. When it becomes in alarm, when the condition is true, when condition meets that if it is less than 20% of usage, it will become, the status will become in alarm. Then I want this alarm to stop the instance. Here you can add EC2 actions, also add auto scaling actions, that is adding instances, and add notifications, SNS, SQS. No, sorry, not SQS, SNS. You can send SNS, that means send emails or SMS. That is one thing, and we are not going for that. And I don't want auto scaling action also. I want EC2 action. When the EC2 instance is getting underutilized, alarm has to stop the instance. So when the metric or expression is outside of the defined threshold, it will become true in alarm. So that means when it becomes less than 20%, it will become in alarm. Okay, then the metric or expression is within the defined threshold. So let's keep it as in alarm or okay. So first we'll see okay and next. So this is EC2. 20%. If it is less than 20%, when OK, stop this instance. Create alarm. So when the state becomes OK, we can see our EC2 instance will get stopped. Now it is in alarm. Okay, let us edit this. Cancel and let us use in alarm and update alarm. So still it's running. So it takes some time. When it becomes in alarm, that means the condition is met when CPU utilization is less than 20. It will automatically stop the instance. We will come back to this. So it takes some time. Just now we have updated the alarm. It will move to in alarm and we can see EC2 instance will be stopped by the alarm. And we have another important thing which is called event bus. Event bus. And before talking about the event bus, we need to talk about log groups. Let me check time. Log groups. So we will create a log group tomorrow. So we will talk about CloudTrail. So we'll talk about CloudTrail and end the session. There is something called as CloudTrail. So this is CloudWatch. CloudWatch is a monitoring tool. You can monitor, set alarms. We have something called log groups and events also, which we are going to talk now. And meanwhile, we'll check this in alarm, no alarms. So, okay, anyway, it takes some time. Coming to CloudTrail. So before talking about these log groups and events, we should know about CloudTrail. All the things which we are doing. Okay, create a trail. No, I'm not creating a trail. We just want to see the CloudTrail. And this is CloudTrail. And we have event history here. So put metric alarm. And I have used this put metric alarm. And then I have used this create service linked role. I have created an IAM role for Lambda. And then put dashboard. We have created dashboard, deleted the DynamoDB table, deleted some alarms. So they are deleted when I deleted my uh, DynamoDB. So this describe Kinesis streaming destination. So this is also DynamoDB stream. So all these things are related to DynamoDB. If you remember what we have done in this today's class, I have created a DB instance. And then I have created a key pair and downloaded the key pair while launching the EC2 instance. I have launched the EC2 instance. I have created a DynamoDB table. And DynamoDB table has used the alarm. For that, it has created SNS topic. And from here onwards, all these operations are related to DynamoDB table. Up to here, creating role is Lambda function. We have just added one Lambda function. It has created a role, attach role policy, all these things. So create function. After that, all these are related to Lambda function. And then event source mapping. This is also for Lambda function. Then I have modified the database instance. If you remember, we have modified and modified the security group, authorized security group ingress. We have edited the inbound rules of this security group. And second time also I have added the security group of EC2 instance, right? If you remember, I have edited this. So all the operations, things that are happening, all the events occurring simply. What is event? AWS says event means some change happening to the AWS existing state. So now AWS has some existing state. It has some resources and they are running or stopped. It has some existing state. And if you make any change to this existing state, it can be starting your EC2 instance or provisioning a S3 bucket, uploading an object in the S3 bucket, or adding the tags to S3 bucket, anything. Any change to its existing status is called as event. And all those events will be logged under event history. And this will be by default, and this is free of cost. And it will 14 days of logs will be available by default. After 14 days you will not able to see these logs. The old logs will not be there. If you want to keep these logs, store these logs for auditing purpose, you want to keep these logs. You don't, you want them maybe once in a 6 months or once in a year. Your company does auditing, they need all the logs, how this AWS is getting utilized, and to analyze the costs, performance, everything. They will do auditing say once in 6 months, and you need 6 months of logs. And this event history will be available for only 14 days, I think. Max is 14 days. Up to 12 weeks. However, you can custom it to 12 weeks. Say, for example, I want to store these logs. Then I can create a CloudTrail log group. We have a log group. We call it as CloudWatch log group. Sorry. We can have all these logs in that log group, saved in this log group. It will create a S3 bucket and store all the log data in the S3 bucket. Let us go to CloudTrail back and create a trail. So get started with AWS CloudTrail by creating a log your AWS account activity. Create CloudTrail. Management events, and there are two types of events: management events and object or data events. Management events are high level or less in cost, whereas object events or data events, not object events, sorry, data events, they are bit expensive compared with management events. So we already know events means change that is happening to AWS existing status. And if that change is happening related to management, like creating a S3 bucket, deleting a S3 bucket, adding tags to the S3 bucket, these are all management events. I am putting an object into the S3 bucket. Someone read object from the S3 bucket. They have got sent and get request to S3 bucket and read access the object, and it is happening inside the S3 bucket and it is related to data. So that is data event. So the trial name is management events, and the trial it will add these logs to trial log bucket and folder. So where this will helpful is while creating events. So here it's just a log group. We are just knowing about two types of event: management events and data events. So let's just create a trail. Say a CloudTrail log group has been created for us. Let us go here. S3 bucket will be there and all the logs will be there in that S3 bucket. So no objects. Let us make, I'll create one S3 bucket and see the log. I already have this S3 bucket. Let us upload any object, add files, downloads. Let us upload this one. Upload. So one event has occurred. I have uploaded an object into the S3 bucket. See, it's there. CloudTrail. Mm, okay. It is for management events, right? So no logs here, but we can see in event history. If I go to CloudTrail, it is there. Stop instances is the latest event. View full event history. Refresh. Just now I have put an object into S3 bucket. Yeah, see S3 bucket is there. Put bucket public access block. So put bucket policy, something has happened. So before that, create bucket. Who created the bucket? AWS. I have created CloudTrail. So we have created this CloudTrail logs bucket. So let us go to S3 CloudTrail log group and check. Logs, CloudTrail. No logs here. And also I'll go to CloudWatch. I have created a group, right? I can also create a log group here. So right now I have an S3 bucket where CloudTrail logs management events. So not data events. So the one event occurred, I have uploaded the object, which is a data event. Suppose I create an S3 bucket, it's a management event. And what is happening inside the bucket, it's data event. Same thing with EC2. So something happening inside the EC2, it's an data event. Suppose you are changing security group of the EC2, or you have stopped the EC2, started the EC2, it's a management event. And along with CloudTrail, you can also create a log group here in the CloudWatch. So let us create log group. Okay, create. We have created a log. So then why we need two logs? We have one cloud log here. CloudTrail is also a uh, logging thing, and also we have created a S3 bucket which logs the management events. We have those things. When CloudTrail is already there, then why I need one more log group here? So we will come to know about this when we talk about events, right? Whereas CloudTrail is for logging purpose. Okay, CloudTrail. Just now I have created a CloudWatch log group, right? It's there. It logs all the details, and if I want to uh, save these logs in the management events, I can save these logs. That's it. CloudTrail ends there. That's what you can do with the CloudTrail. But if you want to trigger some action, yes, I have uploaded a object in the S3 bucket. Then what? As a admin, I am maintaining all the S3 buckets. If any upload happens in the S3 bucket, I should get notification. Right. So then how I can do that? There is no feature like that in CloudTrail. CloudTrail is only logs. Logs your operations, logs the events that are happening in AWS. Its job is that's it. If you create a CloudTrail group, it will also save in S3 bucket. It will create one S3 bucket and save. Then if I want to trigger some action based on the events happening in the AWS, like sending notifications or triggering Lambda functions, then I need to use CloudWatch logs. So for that, I have created CloudWatch log, because here I don't have that option. It's only logging. Logging, I can save the logs. Suppose based on these logs, if I want to trigger any action, then I have to use CloudWatch logs. Right? That's why I have created CloudWatch log group. And right now we can't see this CloudWatch log group. And we should make a API call from CloudTrail to this CloudWatch log, which we will talk about this tomorrow. And let me close this. Go to alarm once and check it. Still running. Yes, stopped. I have not stopped it, and it has been stopped by CloudWatch alarm. Say why insufficient data? Now again it has become in alarm. When it has become in alarm, we set an condition to stop the EC2 instance, and again stopping the EC2 instance, it has become insufficient data. When again I start my EC2 instance, if it is less than 20% CPU utilization, then state becomes in alarm, it will stop the instance. But this is not a very good alarm, because when you start the instance, automatically it will stop. Obviously, when you start the instance, and I have given a time window of 1 minute, within that 1 minute, it will check and it will stop the instance. So let us delete this alarm. Okay. Okay, then see you tomorrow. And bye bye.